Chai After Dark includes adult language and NSFW content. If you have auntie sensibilities or uncle sensibilities, this podcast may not be for you.
Oh, and one more thing. Please be aware this episode contains some discussions of domestic violence and abuse. Hey, potty people. Captain Ron here. On today's episode of Chai After Dark, we are going over episode 4, season 1 of Indian Matchmaking on Netflix, titled I Want to See You Again. Nadia has a promising date. Pradyuman sees a life coach. Seema Auntie sends Aparna to an astrologer and seeks a cultural match for guidance counselor Vyasar. Side note, this is probably my favorite episode to record so far because of the growth of some of the characters on the show and new additions, while getting a little more serious with the Jai team around these themes. You also hear some growth within our conversations as well. Once again, thank you for listening, and here we go. Hey, potty people. Welcome to a new episode of Chai After Dark. This is your captain speaking, Captain Ron, a.k.a. Imran from greatpods.co. Go check it out. Maybe you'll find your next best listen after Chai After Dark. And we have our lovely co-host, Shabnam. What's up?
Hey.
Hey, girl.
Hey, girl.
And we have our other co-host, Sameem the Dream.
You know, I'm actually drinking chai for the first time while recording this podcast, so I'm pretty excited. I think it's going to add a little extra.
We are recording this on a Saturday morning, so it's like, I got my chai, you got your chai, Shabnam?
I got my coffee. I need something a little stronger.
Oh, my God.
So this should be coffee after dark? Coffee.
It doesn't flow the same.
It doesn't. It totally doesn't.
It does not. But we got 2 out of the 3 is not bad for having chai on this lovely day. What's going on with you guys this week?
I had an interesting encounter this week. I was trying to listen to our podcast off Spotify, and I don't use Spotify, but it was working. I was logged in, and I kept getting kicked off. It kept moving Chai After Dark to like a Chapel Roan song. It kept moving it to like a Noah Khan song. Breakup shit. Then I realized I was still stuck in my ex-wife's Spotify. And I kept playing it while she was listening to music during work. And then she kept kicking me off. I kept kicking her off. And then eventually I freaked out, logged out of Spotify, and hoped to God that she didn't know it was me literally interacting
listening
with her
to Chai
in
After
Spotify.
Dark.
Yeah. Listening to Chai After Dark while I'm trying to listen to it at the same time. It was some wild ass shit because I don't think she knows about this.
Well, it's definitely going to be in her history that she did listen to Chai After Dark.
The digital world is so annoying.
Dude, this is like some new age psychological warfare that just happened.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, one day maybe I'll find out what she thought about it. But yeah, I'm somewhat happy it happened because I could tell this funny story to you guys.
Do you think it's a clean way to get revenge? Just messing up their algorithm?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we are in that realm of Chapel Roan listeners, Phoebe Bridgers, Lana Del Rey. We might be in that Venn diagram, but mostly for white girls. I don't think I would.
I'll
be very
occasionally
surprised.
listen here and there.
Yeah?
But yeah, definitely not the hardcore of the listeners.
You're a Casey Musgraves guy. I know
Yeah,
that.
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. You're more country.
I'm going to
rock
that
and roll.
concert when it's in LA. She's coming. And I'm
Oh,
going.
yeah. Kia Forum, October. Meet Captain Ron at Casey Musgraves. He's gonna be handing out some
time out.
stickers.
Are you going?
No, you're going to hand out stickers for us.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you knew that it was October 4th.
Dude, I'm up in the SoCal scene.
Oh my God. That's so, like, I feel kind of creeped out now.
You know, I also
Stop
have access
stalking
to
me.
I have access to the internet while we talk. It's pretty wild.
Oh, shit.
That digital landscape, it never ends.
That was a quick search, though. Like, you're like, oh, I'm going to talk about, Casey Musgraves. Let me look up the concert in LA.
I actually
Immediately.
prepped that talking point earlier in the week. And I wanted to bring it up to see your reaction, so it worked out pretty
you're
well.
such a little bish. Damn.
Oh, man.
All right. When I'm on my Spotify, and I've connected it through Alexa, so when my mom wakes up, when she gets to the living room, she'll ask Alexa to play a Quranic verse.
So I will be on my Spotify listening to whatever Casey or Grateful Dead or something, whatever, and it'll all of a sudden just turn off, and then I'll hear in the background like a Quran verse. I'm like, okay, mom's awake. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. And I've done that exactly what you've done, going back and forth, because I will be somewhere else, maybe some other city or whatever, and I'm listening, and I'll go, what the heck is happening to me? The first time I was like, what is happening? What is happening? I keep on turning it back to my music, and it always turned back to a Quranic verse. And I'd finally looked at my Spotify, and then I was like, oh, this is being played from so-and-so device. And I'm like, Mom, is that you? And she's like, yes, that's me.
Oh, man.
This whole story of Imran's reminds me of, like, you know, that Netflix meme where it's like that moment your Netflix show ends and your TV screen goes black and you see yourself in the reflection. You're like, what is my life?
Oh,
That's like what your guys' two stories remind me of.
What are we? What are we? Who are we?
Yeah.
Well, Shabnam, you didn't mention what's happening with your life.
So I just got a grocery order and I look at the picture and the guy is shirtless in his Instacart profile picture as an Instacart shopper. That does not inspire, that does not inspire confidence. In fact, I'm definitely like, leave it at my door. And then I see he checks out. He's like driving to my house. I see this shirtless man picture blob moving along, getting closer and closer to my house. I'm just like, this is really weird. But thankfully he just, dropped it off and left and everything is fine. But I don't know what would possess someone to be like, you know what? Like,
I would wonder how it got through the process of photo verification type stuff on the app, being like, yeah, this is a great picture with you shirtless. Like, you can see the top half of his shoulder.
Yeah.
Just no undershirt or anything. It's just,
yeah.
Maybe he has a tube top on. You never know.
Instacart took his shirt. That's messed up. Took the shirt off his
Knew
back.
the gig economy was up to something.
Totally.
Maybe that was his message. He's like, you know what? I'm so kind. I give people the shirt off my back.
Aw. Give him extra
What a
tip.
nice guy.
Well, excellent, guys. All right. We are going to be talking episode 4 from Netflix's Indian Matchmaking. And we start off with Anju and Chandan, auntie and uncle intros that they had in a previous episode. So they started adding in these intros of older couples that have been married for a long time. Your thoughts on continuing this type of intro?
It's as if they needed some filler to the episode because they didn't have enough content. It's cute. It's cute filler, but
They're trying to prove that these marriages work or could work.
Yeah.
Like, this uncle is implying he's got all sorts of secret favorite things that the wife does for him, and they giggle about it. So,
well, we need
I
to
was
go
pretty
through what he
surprised.
actually says because it's
Yeah.
hilarious. But to your point, Aparna agrees with what you said because that's what she said in her book too. She said they use these older couples to basically try to show that, like, oh, arranged marriage works and there's not this toxicity that seems to be coming out, which is untrue because there is that toxicity of classism, casteism, sexism, colorism, all the isms,
That sounds fair. Sounds fair for sure. But yeah, it's cute. It's funny. Whenever I saw those types of clips, I'm like, yeah, okay, so every marriage is a crapshoot. It really is. It could go either way. Arranged, love, it doesn't really matter. Friends introduction, it doesn't matter. They're all kind of the same. We all take chances, or at least those of you who are married. I'm not telling myself because I'm not married, but like those of you who are married, you're all taking chances. You're taking a big risk, and it's a crapshoot. Shabnam, as the recent person who got married, how did you feel? What was that adrenaline like?
I mean, it's like, honestly, that's the most exciting time. It's really exciting to be a bride, and people don't talk enough about the come down. It's like such an adrenaline high, and then there's like this come down, and that come down can be like a little bit depressing because you made all this room in your life for this like event and being the center of attention and having all this fun and like all this stuff, and then all of a sudden it's just like regular life. It's a little weird, right? But the marriage part of it, I think you're right. It's a crapshoot in that, like, you can really try to get to know someone before you get married and figure out if they're a good match. And I don't think people do that enough. So yes, you could try to do that, but then you don't really know what's going to happen in their life and what's going to happen in your life going forward. and then the combination of your guys' traits, how that's going to like shake out. So you guys could be like the perfect fit, and then some crazy thing could happen in one of your lives and the person totally changes and everything goes to shit, right? So like you really never know what's going to happen. If I look back on my, 1.8 years of marriage so far, I had like so many things happen that I totally did not see coming, and, we're great and all of that, but not what I expected for our first 1.8 years of marriage.
I mean, this is my only relatable part of it, is that listening to you feels like it's like a startup. You're building a foundation, and there are going to be things that are thrown at you that you have to pivot or adjust to accordingly if you want it to be a success. That's something I'm learning as a startup founder. And it just sounds like that's what it is, because you are starting up with a new life with a partner, your co-founder, essentially.
Yeah, that's right. I think so.
For Samim, though, like you've gone through the breakup part of like a founder of a startup, right? I'm personally interested in hearing that sort of life, because I'm learning from you guys also, so I can create that foundation in my future as well. So Samim, like,
you don't
what
want to
are your
use
things?
Don't use foundation or stability or anything with me. You don't want to learn anything from me. The only thing I'll say is this random couple, the uncle and auntie, they're doing it the right way, but I don't know what they were saying on the couch actually translate into their real life. But they ask him, what's your favorite thing about her? And he says she bakes the best sweets.
Cakes.
And she keeps me fed. Cakes. He
cakes. Said that they the reason why he wanted to meet her, why he said yes to meet her, is because he was told that she bakes good cakes.
Yeah, and I don't know what kind of cake he's referring to, but that's like what his thing was. And then the next thing he refers
Auntie
to...
be packing.
Yeah, Auntie had that cake, and then he's like, she also does some of my secret favorite things that I'm not going to say. And then they like both giggle. So it's like obviously referencing some sexual activity in the bedroom. What if it's unreal.
Just basically like she just makes some really good chai?
No, I know. It could be anything. Yeah, like he's like, nobody's going to take my wife's chai, only me. But no, dude, for me, I can't give you any sort of insights right now. I need to like process all my breakups from the past. And
I agree with that, but I disagree that I can't learn anything from it. Because
you can learn something.
You learn from failures, right? So, hey, that's
what I would say. If I didn't go to the several years of therapy prior to being married, I would have a tougher time, because our culture lends itself to a lot of passive aggressive communication, sweeping things under the rug, not really addressing problems. And that's not going to work to have a healthy marriage. So I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, simplicity would be my advice. And if I'm seeing...
if your insurance covers in therapy.
Oh, yeah. Everybody out there, get a good therapist. Tell them all your problems. It doesn't mean that you're alone.
Yeah, tell them your problems, and then like work on how to make adjustments in your life, because that's really what's going to get you to a better place overall and in your marriage, I think.
So now, moving on, in the episode, we first hit up Nadia for the first time in Chicago on the River Tour with our boy Shaker, the lawyer, who previously went out with who?
Aparna.
Yeah, our girl Aparna from Texas. And remember, he had the monogrammed luggage. But this time around in the scene, Nadia's mom joins Nadia and Shaker on the boat ride with each other. I thought that was very interesting, because all these episodes, you do see families meeting for the first time or them going out alone together for the first time. So this time around, Nadia brings her mom, and I like her mom. She's a nice auntie and everything, and kind of funny too.
Yeah, he asks Nadia if she wants something to drink, and she says she could do a coffee, and then her mom says, I could do a mimosa, and she laughs and says, well, I guess if she's going to drink, I will. So this, I feel like, is a throwback to her short date with Guru. And I know we went through Guru's article, and you're going to defend your boy Guru, Imran, but I think Netflix was kind of throwing it back to that, where she was like kind of afraid to order a mimosa maybe. And she was just like, okay, forget it. I'll just order a coffee. And then her mom's like, no, I want a mimosa. So she's like, okay, I'm going to get a mimosa too.
The mom was doing her best to get them liquored up, man. That they're on that boat, the Chicago architecture boat ride. I've been on that boat ride. It's pretty romantic. And there is a bar on there. And I totally remember the trashiest people drinking on that boat. So he runs and gets them mimosas. And the mom was like, hold the orange juice. So I thought that was funny. And then later, he has a whole full bottle of like vodka or wine, and they're just like getting liquored up. But they cut a lot of that date out. They only had like a minute of context, but seemed to went pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
out
also,
of a full day of content, like it just felt like it was way too early. It was a little overcast as well. So I just felt like, wow, it's really early. But I could feel like that was a full day worth of content that they edited it down to like 2 minutes. And I was like, what did we miss in that content that was not put in?
Yeah. But one of the interesting things is she talks about Guyana, and he says that he really wanted to go to Guyana. And to me, I'm like, okay, Shaker wants to go to Guyana just as much as he wanted to go to Dubai. And it's interesting to hear Aparna versus Nadia's reaction. So while Aparna was like, why would you ever want to go to Dubai? On the other hand, Nadia's like, putting way too much stock in him saying that he wants to go to Guyana. And she's like, I've never heard of anyone saying they want to go to Guyana before. And he was even interested in it before he met me. And it's like, okay,
This guy has a script. He did the same thing with Aparna. He's like, I'm going to go to Dubai. And then with Nadia, he's like, I'm going to go to Guyana. Like this guy's, I don't know if he's a player or what, but he's definitely like,
dude, you
premier
guys just,
first date guy.
God.
This guy's like the premier first date guy.
You're just reminding me, there's a podcast that I'm recommending in the Great Pods newsletter this week. Go to greatpods.co/newsletter. And it's called You Probably Think This Story Is About You. And it's kind of true crime-ish, but not really. It's scam, like dating scam. And it's great storytelling so far. But the reason why I bring it up is because they talk about something called mirroring, where the person mirrors the other person, especially on like the first couple of dates. So it just gets them to hook up with them. So you're like, oh, and this person's just like me, this person, but they have like practically no interest in the other person, or they don't have their own personality to begin with. So you remind me that, oh, Shaker has a script, but he's also just mirroring what they have, or at least attempting to mirror. Aparna didn't give in to the mirroring. She just throws left a ball here, right ball there. You don't know what kind of pitch she's pitching. So that I could definitely see. But with Nadia, she's into it because he's mirroring what she is. I guess that's my initial thought from what you're saying.
I don't think we can attribute that much intention to Shaker yet. He might just be trying to relate to people, you know, like I mentioned in a previous episode about how rules of first few conversations is, I think, like improv rules, say yes and don't say no. Because he might just be trying to like, okay, let me relate to this person, get a little comfortable, and then disarm someone. And then that's kind of how you get to know someone, right? And I feel like Aparna doesn't really have that skill, and she doesn't really realize, or like she's not interested in that, versus Nadia almost feels very desperate. Like she's constantly just looking for like, what is that one thing we have in common that's going to signal to me that this is my husband, you know? And she's like catching on to ketchup, and she's catching on to like, my God, he wants to go to Guyana. And it's like, dude, that's not that big of a deal, you know?
God, I am so wishy-washy this episode. I agree with you too. I'm going to switch my ground now. Yeah, you're right. First date, you want to be as pleasant as possible so that we can get along and get to know the person. So I stand corrected as well with your argument. Okay. So we move on though. Like we're in the middle of Nadia's date, and then we hit up Aparna, who's taking the dogs out for a walk.
Who let the dogs out?
She's bad. She's bad. They show Nadia giggling, laughing with Shaker, and they instantly cut to Aparna walking, saying she doesn't mind getting rejected. They did that in such a clever way. They're playing a rap song called She's Bad, and they slow down the image of her and her mom walking like they are part of some like gangster Indian or Houston suburbs. It was like the goofiest cut I've ever seen, because the only thing bad about Aparna is bad. Like not like she's bad. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's that whole Michael Jackson conundrum.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of funny that stark contrast between Nadia and Aparna.
But the Seema auntie thinks she has a block in her energy and telling Aparna that she needs to go visit this astrologer. And this astrologer started going off on this like weird tangent. She's just like, just talk about me, because she's getting tired of this tangent storytelling from the astrologer.
You mean the aerospace engineer? when he walks in, the subtitle on the bottom said his name and then aerospace engineer. So I don't know if aerospace means astrology or if the guy's day job is to work at NASA Houston, and then he moonlights as an astrologer for people trying to get married. But they introduce him as an astrologer, but he is actually an aerospace engineer uncle. Like he could be. It was so funny.
Yeah, you're so right. He's Dilip, astrologer and aerospace engineer, which is, I mean, that's the most desiest thing ever, right? And like, we're all the same way. Like, I'm tech lawyer, podcasters. So it's kind of like, can't really make fun of him for that, but it's pretty funny. And then the best part is he says, before it is astrology, it is astronomy. It is the snapshots of the heavens when you were born.
Okay, so I just looked up his LinkedIn. Apparently, I have 3 friends that are connected. Dilip Bhatt, former senior engineer at Ontic BBA Aviation. Oh, bro, he went to USC. He went to USC.
Oh, your boy, dude. You should bring him onto the podcast.
Dude, he lives out here in LA.
There you go. Seema auntie, when she can't find anyone, she seems to have this pattern to send somebody to an astrologer or life coach. So Imran, you can just cut out Seema auntie and go directly to the source.
Yeah. I don't even know the middleman, middlewoman. What's funny as we go through these episodes, I am far more interested in the side characters that come through and deep diving in them, because I feel like, I want to know more about this dude.
He made an amazing point. He says, passions and emotions mix up in you, Aparna, and your heart should guide you. It creates a stubbornness. And obviously he got that from Seema auntie or Netflix, but that is the first thing he said. He like pinpointed her personality within the first 10 seconds of them showing him walking into the house. And then she's straight up like, yeah, you're totally right. She's like, I'm totally stubborn.
And then he says to her, in the last 1.5 years, you may have found disappointment in romantic relationships, which it's like, obviously that's true. Like if someone's now looking to get married, their last 1.5 years would be disappointing. Sameem, Imran, hasn't your last 1.5 years been disappointing?
It hasn't been a bad 1.5 years, like outside of the romantic stuff.
Well, but that's what we're talking about, the romantic stuff, right? I'm saying.
Oh, no, I know. Yeah. It's hard for me to get obsessed with my own prospects and my love life because for most of my life, I have been married. I've been single a bunch of years too because I'm a lot older than I think a lot of people realize that might be listening. And Shabnam, me and you have talked about this in the past, like 10 years ago. I remember where we both said to each other when we were both single, like, I could be single forever. We weren't desperate. I don't ever think. We never, me, you, Imran, all our friends that have been single for a long time, there was a group of us, like 12 of us, and none of us had partners. I don't think anybody came across as desperate as Nadia or Aparna. Nadia particularly, and we're going to get to her again when they cut back to Shaker. But no, I mean, 1.5 years of solitude might be better than 1.5 years of a toxic relationship.
Sure. Yeah. And,
wow,
but then,
Sameem dropping bombs here, dropping knowledge.
That's right. Everybody reach out to me, Sameem, aerospace engineer / astrologer.
So to close out Aparna for this scene, he tells her, if you look within and are honest, you'll find real happiness escapes you.
And then she's like, is he talking about me? Like, yeah, obviously.
No, he's talking about the other person in the room, the ghost.
There's another person in the room.
Yeah.
We kind of see a little breakthrough with Aparna, and you're kind of like, okay, does she actually start to get it now? And then we head back to Nadia. And after the morning hangout date on the river with mom, now it's just them with the camera. And I wonder, does the camera count as a chaperone or a merim? Like if I were to go out with somebody, I had a camera on, is that a merim or chaperone? Like, does that count as a halal date?
Let's put some context out there. Why, Shabnam, why would a chaperone be needed in terms of what Imran is saying? In
Well,
our culture, at least.
So for Muslims, they want people to not date privately. That's like the religious right thing to do. Kind of like a TLC Christian courtship, right? But also like traditionally in South Asian culture, dating is, like Imran said in one of our previous episodes, up and coming. It's still about arranged marriage. And so you still have these like chaperone moments. Like that's the whole reason why Nadia's mom went to meet Shaker too, right? Because marriage is not just about the two individuals. It's about the community, the families. So yeah, I don't know that the camera would count.
As a madam.
It
Now,
would just
I just want to
deter you
clarify.
from getting down.
There's a rom-com moment, as Nadia would even say. She's like, I think this is my rom-com moment. I feel like, yeah, it did feel a little bit like that, but they also had a couple of mimosas drinking. Obviously, releases some of the inhibitions and raises their emotional state of rom-comminess.
She said she felt a true connection with Shaker, and like she was so giddy the whole time. And then at the end, she says she's a smitten kitten, and I'm like, God.
And then the way she laughs was they kept it going. She like goes, I'm a smitten kitten, and it stays on for 3 or 4 seconds, and she's like, and I'm like, holy shit, dude, this is like, if any girl went home and giggle like that after meeting me, I don't know, man. I don't think I would ever know that she did that because I'm not at her house, but
Right.
I don't want someone to be that excited about me because we're just human. Nobody's that much better than the next person. It's more about like the connection. And I wonder how many people have gotten into long-term relationships or marriages, like you guys mentioned, them getting drunk together with the wine based off like shenanigans on 1 date or 2 dates. People get into these situations where they're like, shit, we drank too much and now we're together 12 years later.
The memes like, don't get that excited, girl. It's all downhill from here.
Well, I mean, sometimes, obviously booze plays a role in their emotional state, 100%. But I read, when I get fed on the algorithm, they were talking about Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr. and how they met. And he was being interviewed like 2 decades later. They said they were friends before and filming all these movies and TV shows and whatnot together. But it wasn't until one friend canceled on one of their like friends hangout sesh. It was just those two. It was like an impromptu date, I suppose, but they were boozing it up. And when they boozed it up, then they were like, oh, like, you're cool, like, let's get together type of thing. And so they were hooking up after that and dating and so on. And now they're married 2 decades later and they still love each other. So sometimes, the inhibitions being knocked down so the person sees the real you. So
wow. Thanks for validating my incoherent rambling about shenanigans and booze, but you're totally right. If Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar of Buffy fame, I think.
Yeah.
I don't actually know who that is.
She's all that.
Yeah,
in
you're
Buffy.
right. You're right. Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
And I did not look that up. That's straight from the dome.
No, but like Imran said at the beginning, marriage is a risk and it's a crapshoot, and good for them. They made it.
So yeah, I mean, I didn't really mind. Okay, the laughing is, to each their own. But if that's what helps you, that's what helps you. If it doesn't, you try not to have it as a crutch, because when you're sober for most of the time and you're married, and all of a sudden like you're kind of being conservative of your feelings and stuff, then it's like, okay, what's going on here? Time to go to therapy, right?
The laugh, just the laugh was enough for her to go to therapy.
for you, I was like, oh, that's somewhat cute and funny. That's her thing. Whatever. But anyway, this episode, the way that these guys, at least early on with Aparna and Nadia, it's kind of coming to a growing up phase for this season where you're understanding yourself, right? And that includes like Aparna with the astrology. Like there's some growth to this, which I like to see some progression in a show. And, we start off with the very first episode, we get to introduction, we're kind of like, oh, what's going on here? And then you're at episode 4 and you're having to understand they're trying to figure out themselves. So I appreciate that we kind of jump back to the astrology, even though we talked about Dilip Uncle and Aparna feeling bad, feeling alone, and she has to like really reckon with herself before she goes on another date.
Yeah. So Dilip says Jupiter is driving the bus now, but on June 19th, there will be a change. Then Lord Venus will lead the navigation and the window of married life will open.
Man.
Yeah. And she says that that's in 8 weeks and she will be in New York running a 5K for her friend's bachelorette.
Hilarious.
Which she's really pissed about because she's not a runner and her friend's a runner and is making everyone run on her bachelorette trip. But she says maybe she'll find her perfect guy as she does her 5K.
Maybe.
I
Someone's
found
gonna see her
that
huffing and panting.
hilarious.
Yeah.
I know.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. This was obviously taped 3-4 years ago. But there's that recent trend of forget dating apps, join a running club.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Have you
people
done it, Imran?
dating within. I have not done that because I'm running my 5Ks at home and stuff. But it looks like I may have to join a running club soon. I'll report back to you if that happens at one point.
It's all
But I
the
find it
rage
funny.
down here in San Diego, I think.
Have you joined? Are you going to join?
Nah, man, I'm okay. I try to avoid people that are looking for partners. I need it much more organically.
Exactly.
Preferably,
So you go running.
I'd like
What
to
if it's
steal you away
organic?
from your current partner. I think that's my niche.
Okay.
Jesus.
You still have some things to work out first before you can get into that world or at least back into that world. Got
I
it.
remember like 8 years ago, I said some girl had a boyfriend and Samim told me speed bump, not stop sign. So there you go.
So Aparna doesn't want to, and she doesn't want a fobby person. And I say fobby person with no disrespect to international out there. My friends, they know, they call me ABCD and I call them fobs. So I know you're not my friend that's a listener, potentially, but it's not in a derogatory term.
So before the scene ends, Dilip says that Aparna's man will be as determined as she is, but not really passionately expressive. And she says, oh yeah, please don't find me a man like that. Like she does not want anyone passionately expressive. Like I was just like, okay.
Wild.
Yeah. And then he gives her this mantra prayer audio file to listen to. Classic Desi South Asian move, whether you're Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, whatever. Everybody's got a marriage prayer for you, especially if you're a girl, and everyone's done a marriage prayer.
I like how he brought it up, though. So when I was watching the scene, I was thinking, if I paid anybody for anything, whether it was like housework or like other services, and they were like, hey, I can't do anything for you, but let me outsource what I'm supposed to do for you to the heavens and the stars and the planets. This guy was like, Saturn needs to connect with the energy of Aparna. She has to activate this gem and then listen to that said audio file, Shabnam, that you just referred to. So she had to like somehow connect with Saturn. Then she had to put on a gem on her finger. Then she had to listen to the audio file. It's so ridiculous. I'd be so
Sapphire
pissed.
ring.
It was just so crazy. And he almost, it didn't even seem like he believed himself because he had like this weird sly smile on his face. He's just outsourcing her getting married. Seema auntie outsourced it to him, who outsourced it to the stars. It's so strange.
It's not him, okay? It's the astrology and the astronomy. That's it.
Well, it didn't work because we're living in real time.
Yeah, in real time, June has already passed and nothing has happened. And then we hit up India. We're back visiting one of our boys, Pradyuman, with the relationship advisor, Varka Chulani. And that was an interesting conversation because
she's also really cute.
Yeah, she's a cute life coach. She's older. I was going to say definitely older, but no, she's older than him. And the questions she's asking him are good questions. And he thought it was a profound experience. It was weird for me to see what they do in like reality TV, right? There's the scene and then they have the one-on-one interview. And so his reaction, it was just weird to me.
She made him feel some type of way for sure, you know. But he said to her that it gets to him being single and that he really wants someone. And she says, it seems like you're looking for someone to provide you companionship, emotional, sexual, and friendship. And as soon as she said sexual, he was like, yes. I was like, okay, calm down. He basically is like, let me ask you something. And he's like, what do girls expect? Like, you know, when I say girls, I mean like a mature woman who maybe has a career in helping people and who also has a fashionable bob. Like, do you think that type of woman would be into me sexually? Just wondering. You know, if you want to come see my closet.
Wait, does he really say
the
that?
closet.
No, he doesn't say that. He just asks her what she thinks women want, but that's
I was about to
basically what he
believe
felt
your
like he wants.
freaking butt, man. I was gonna believe you. I was like, did I miss that quote?
Yeah, because he did take C. Monty to the closet in episode 1 really, really quick. And now we're on episode 4. And I'm like, this guy's still taking girls into his closet. But yeah, that would be amazing if it was true.
But you were aligned in saying that just because he mentioned that it was a profound experience for him. And, and she asked back, she's like, do you have what women want from you?
She says that women are attracted to people that make them feel secure enough to allow them to be their own person. She says a lot of women are afraid that if they marry, particularly in an arranged marriage setup, that they're going to lose everything they've constructed. And he just seems like he got really uncomfortable. His mind is blown. He wants to take her into his closet and
keep her there.
But also has never heard that women
might want something.
Yeah, might want something.
Or their own
Emotionally
career
from a
or
marriage.
something, right?
His stare into space after she asked him very directly, she said, what do you think girls want from you? And it's probably a clever editing as well, but he just stares into space because he can't ever imagine that a girl would actually want something. He thinks he's the catch. And that's kind of the perception I get from him. He's like, well, what does it matter what a girl wants? I'm the one that wants. And we're going to get to his next match, which is going to make a lot of sense why I'm saying this. Because once he gets his next match, it's pretty obvious that he doesn't give a shit. What girls want, he's only looking for himself.
Yeah, he's like, they can have tiny corner of my closet and they get to live in my dad's house and then whatever. That's it. What else could you want?
And this is why I enjoyed at least this half of the episode. This is an episode of growth and understanding oneself. Somebody asked him the question, got into his brain, and he had to stop and whether it's a blank stare or not, but he has to start reflecting on those questions. Oh, it's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street. Let me start thinking about this. Regardless of what happens at the outcome, I actually liked this episode for those reasons of a deeper level
totally agree.
Type of situation. And then right after that, we get a new player. Whenever this happens, I always think about when you're playing video games at the arcade. This is probably a dated reference, but you're playing Street Fighter or something, and it says, here comes a new challenger. This is what I feel like when there's a new character introduced in Indian matchmaking. We go back to Austin, Texas, where Vyasar Ganesan, the college counselor, has entered the field of Indian matchmaking.
And by entered, you mean he's rolling on a school chair throughout the hallway of the school he teaches at.
He's the fun guy. He's the fun college counselor at high school that you just want to be friends with and talk to. You're just chill AF. And somebody that I personally would be like, yo, hey, we're going to go out to Dave & Buster's. Let's go. And he's down to go.
I love that his students kind of put him on blast. I knew he was single because he went to watch Endgame on his own. I was like, damn.
No, I know. That's hilarious. I mean, that's a good thing, though. He connects with his students really well.
Yeah.
There's such good validation of his character, especially the way they're telling the story here in this show. I thought it was pretty good. And you're like, oh, I hope this guy wins. It's one of those types of things.
Yeah. And then he says he's only dated one Indian girl and mostly white girls.
I mean,
why
from
do you
Austin.
think that is?
Austin, Texas. I think that's why.
Yeah, that's true.
There's plenty of Daisies. Dude, Austin, okay.
Now there is, but Austin, I think there was less Daisies.
Dude, University of Texas, Austin has a bunch of Daisies there too.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's because, so he says he's mostly dated white girls, and then they go into how he wants to be a stay-at-home dad. He wants to try new things, but he also says he can cook really well, and the woman would never have to cook. I mean, I don't know if a Daisy girl would want a variation of themselves. So I'm not saying all Daisy women are homemakers and cook, but there is a propensity for gender roles in our society. He seems to want to take that reverse approach, and white girls would probably love that shit. This guy's cooking for me. This guy's cleaning up the house. He's going to raise our babies. He has a super gentle, nice personality.
Yeah. But also, dude, realistically, in this arranged marriage process, everything that's slightly below perfect is like a black mark on your biodata. So the fact that his parents are divorced, his mom lives with her parents and her sibling and their kid, and his dad has, abandoned them. This is all like a black mark on his biodata. So he's
Totally.
not going to have an easy time finding a Desi girl through this process. And Seemanti even says that. So that's like, the shitty reality of this entire process.
I'm not giving romantic advice, everyone. Don't go do what I did. But if you do have a decreased biodata, like our boy Vassar here, it's okay. You can still date. There's nothing stopping you. You're still a human being. He's still a good catch. But
that's because dating means getting to know someone and actually marrying a real person. When you are doing an arranged marriage off of biodata and you barely talk to that person, you're marrying that piece of paper, and then
it
you
has
get
to be perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get to be surprised with all of the actual real person stuff after you get married, and then good luck to you, right?
This is not who I said I was going to marry. That sort of bit.
But the thing is, in our culture, it's that you have to be worried about what everyone's thinking. So even if you as a Desi girl like it, it doesn't like you're going to be like, well, my friends are going to think this, and my mom's going to think this, and my aunt's going to think this, and then my chachi's going to say that to me, and my kala's going to say that to me, and like all of that stuff. So it's like a whole built-in system that is like really toxic when it comes to marriage and having a solid, real relationship, in my opinion.
I'm rooting for Vyasar. So he's my new favorite character on the show. And I hope that, if it doesn't work out with his first date, which we see in this episode, I would have liked Seema Auntie to have Nadia and him go on a date. They seem like they could be happy and bubbly together.
Seema would never do that, because while Nadia has a black mark on her biodata of being Guyanese, that black mark is a lot lighter than Vyasar's divorced family black mark and not having a really high paying job. So that's why Seemanti would never do that.
Now we head back to Aparna and Jyotika, who's Aparna's mom, talking about a quilt with pictures of the family youth. Again, reiterating the fact that we get to know them on a deeper level, and there's retrospect of each character that's in this episode. I think it's great, regardless however we think about Aparna, but I think this is a great part of the history. We understand more of the context, because context is king in this regard, because we can talk all we want, but we're not in their shoes, in their history per se.
Yeah, so Shabnam, I think you've read about this in the book too, but this is where they actually introduce Aparna's mom and what actually happened to her and how she got to the U.S.
Yeah. So Aparna's mom got engaged when she was 19, and her parents were put under a lot of pressure. She says she was married for 11 and a half years, and then she got divorced in 1993. So she left with her two kids when they were 6 and 8. So Aparna and her older sister. And she says, quote, "As Hindus, we always celebrate the birth of sons, but those that have daughters are the ones that have great karma from a past life." She says, "So I'm very lucky. I just had my girls, so I was able to keep them." So there's a lot more depth to this than those words. I feel like what she's saying is Aparna's dad didn't give a fuck because all he had was daughters. So he was like, you can take these bitches and go to America. I don't really care. If he had a son, he would be like, don't take my son from me. Right. That's the reality, though.
And where were they living is the key part of this, right?
They were living in Dubai at the time.
Yeah.
And now we get it. Now we get the hate for Dubai.
Yeah, so it all makes sense now. And then Aparna's mom goes on to say, "I believe every human being, unlike myself, has the right to make life choices. I was not given that opportunity to make a decision for my life, so I want my child to have every possible choice." And she says it has affected Aparna, obviously, very deeply. And Seemanti then reiterates that Aparna's mom was forced to get married to someone and now doesn't want her story repeated with Aparna. So I'm going to go into now like the backstory from her book because that gives us even more.
Cool.
So she starts off explaining that she's Sindhi, which is in present day Pakistan. So she talks about how when the British left British India, they did a really shitty job of establishing national boundaries, or what people in the subcontinent refer to as the partition, right? Her family had to flee from what is now Pakistan to Bombay, and her family had a vast amount of land in Sindh in Pakistan, but they had to leave it and just haul themselves to Bombay, to Mumbai as fast as they could, which they did with the help of a friendly government official. So these people had some status, they had some money, and that's why they were able to like get out and start a new life. But all that changed when they left. So Aparna's maternal great-grandmother had the men in her family purchase a government contract using her jewelry, 3 strands of Colombian emeralds. And they purchased with that a government contract to install electrical poles in the city of Goa. The Indian government was given these contracts to displaced people that had just moved involuntarily from Pakistan to India so that they could gain some financial status and to contribute to the building of the infrastructure in India. But she says the local political chaos really kept them from completing the project, and they lost all their money again. So Aparna's great-grandmother sold more jewelry to feed the family. Her great-grandmother became this inspirational figure of female strength in Aparna's family, and this has resonated with her and the women in her family down the line. So eventually members of her family moved abroad out of India to survive financially. Aparna's grandfather went to Ghana, Italy, Spain, and finally settled in Nigeria with his wife. They moved to southeast Nigeria, where they established a number of grocery stores and they started doing well. But then the Civil War broke out. Aparna's mom and her brother were then sent to boarding school back in India with relatives. And this resulted in Aparna's mom being separated from her family, her parents, her brother. So then Aparna's mom gets married at a really young age at 19. And then her mom found herself stuck in this unhappy marriage. Her mom did what few South Asian women could. She left in 1992 with her kids and her wedding jewelry. She said she couldn't stay another minute longer in a society and a house where every moment was controlled and measured. Aparna said in her book, she knew when she was 6 that her father had a temper. She says, quote, the walls in the house were thick, but not thick enough to contain the muffled yells, the loud thuds. This was clearly abuse, and her mom ran from this really bad situation. So this was a really illuminating chapter because it gives you just like such a different picture of Aparna and her life and her mom's life and the like difficult generational trauma they've had for 3-4 generations because of colonialism that really harmed people in so many ways that they still feel today. Like, I don't think Aparna would be this kind of character we see on Indian Matchmaking without this history, right?
Totally. That's super interesting. And it kind of also sheds a light on how so many people in the South Asian culture grew up.
Yeah, and I think it's so courageous for her to be open about this, coming from a culture where no one, again, like no one says this stuff. Why? Because that is a black mark on your bio data. And so the fact that she's like, you know what? No, I'm actually just going to be honest. I really, really, really applaud that.
Yeah. And this is a great segue into like, this scene was really short. So after Aparna's mom talks about when she was 19 and she got engaged, and with the context that you have, it's just a really quick scene with Aparna and her mom. Aparna is talking about how she thinks she is reasonable, but she doesn't really want to be accommodating to a guy. And then the mom's like, okay, that sounds good. But then she says, have you pondered trying to change that? And Aparna just says, I've pondered changing it, but that's it. I don't want to. The end. So she understands that she has a difficult personality. And that's why I referenced that she has great self-awareness. But she doesn't seem to want to change it. She wants someone that's going to fit her mold.
okay, not to get too like into like therapy speak, which I'm not a therapist. I'm just an expert of my own learning of my own life, but it's totally a maladaptive trait. Like she learned this is how her and her mother were able to stay safe for these 30 years of her life. So this is what's worked for her. And, you know, she's made every great decision since she was 3 years old, and she's going to continue to do that. You know, now her environment is different. Maybe I would say that might want to try something new, but I get where she's coming from.
The heavens and the stars and the planets will save her.
By the moon,
Astrology
and the stars
and astronomy.
I
swear.
This is probably the 10th time I'm saying this, but this is like my favorite episode. Again, going back to context, but also relatable in the sense of, you know, my situation. So I was like, wait a second, when did we get from Aparna being antagonist character of the show into a more contextual, like, I totally understand where you're coming from. Like, I totally get it.
Yeah.
The mom telling her story. This episode brings about the whole context of their families. And I'm like, well, that's definitely relatable. My parents divorced when I was in my teens. And I don't know how much I want to share about that, maybe sprinkles throughout. But, you know, hearing that part of the book, watching what we watched, I could just be like, okay, Aparna, you do you, girl. Like from episode 1 of recording this podcast of like, to this episode is like, oh, girl. Yeah, you go. She says, am I demanding? Yes. Now, I wouldn't say, I think my personality is obviously different, but again, I understand her. I empathize with her situation and what she's doing. So I no longer can claim ignorance like from the first episode of the character building. So I did enjoy that.
Yeah, I cannot shit on her in this clip. It was so relatable, like you said. It was also very sad that she ended up like this in her 30s. But this is the one time that I don't want to make fun of her. I don't want to say she's annoying. Like, I felt really bad for her, and at least she has positive history with the females in her life. And if she never gets married, at least she'll be like a strong female and probably live a fairly good life without a partner. So it made her so much more human.
Yeah.
Human? But I would say to the listener, we're here for reflection and laughs and to get down to the commentary of the South Asian diaspora. So there may be some serious moments like this episode itself, which I enjoy as well, because we get to be self-reflective of our own selves to be better. So this podcast is definitely a growth tool for at least myself. But let's keep going. We're done with Aparna for now, and we hit up Vyasar and his date with Manisha.
Okay, so the scene starts with Vyasar talking to his cousin Anuj, right? He's like nervous, getting the house all clean and ready for his date to come over to the house to meet his family. And his date is Manisha, who's 7 years older than him. And him and his cousin are discussing, is the age difference a big deal? You know, they're cool with it. The age difference is not a big deal. Now, this is another thing that triggered me, and maybe I'm going to cuss again, because can you imagine in a million years that Seema Auntie would go to Pradyuman and his family with a girl who's 7 years older than Pradyuman? They would probably cuss her out and throw her out of the house. But for Vyasar, because his parents are divorced and he's damaged goods, he can be with someone 7 years older. And I'm not saying that I think that she's old or not good enough for him. This is not how I think. This is what I dislike, what I chose not to be victimized by, and I married outside my race. But this is the underlying message of what's happening here in this episode.
And there's nothing wrong with Manisha.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with Vyasar. Like, I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with either of them. And this episode has a recurring theme, and it's trying to fit humans into a one-page biodata, and then there's something off about their resume. So then you have to go to the second tier of available prospects to marry. You're totally right. I agree with you, and it does deserve a few cuss words if anybody wants to throw them out.
But then we go back to Pradyuman for another biodata for him. And this time it's a model, Rushali. And of course, he's all about the model. He's fluttering. He's kind of getting nervous about it, but like a nervous, like, oh, she's hot. What am I going to say? What am I going to do? Your thoughts on that model and that bio data?
He says he was shocked at why Seema Auntie didn't show him, quote unquote, something like this before. Now you're going the right way. And maybe there's some ESL in here, but I'm like, really? Like something? This just sounds like dick behavior.
And this is what I was referring to earlier when we were talking about how he was so shocked that girls might have requirements of their prospects. This is the scene that I was referring to where he's like, okay, model, I'm in. I don't care what she wants back. And that's all he cared about. He looks at his sister, Khushbu, smiling and smelling beautifully. He's just in like this whole other world where that's who he wants. He wanted a model. You're totally right. Like, Seema Auntie knows this guy's so vain, and she brings this model picture. But the model seemed cool. Like, we don't meet her yet, but she had an actual profile. It wasn't just that she was hot.
Yeah.
Like an actual working model.
Yeah. Miss India finalist 2015. But he says, from her dressing style to her look, how she carries herself, I can meet her. And I'm like, okay.
Because she want to meet you, bro.
He's such a creep. He's a creep.
Yeah, it's like literally
it's so gross. I know, man. I'm like, there was one time I'm like, can you imagine if I was the biodata and somebody was talking to me like that? Like, once the model sees the Netflix episode, which was 4 years ago, I understand, so she's already seen it. Like, how could you be with this guy? Even if they ended up being together and the episode comes out a year later, she watches it and she's like, this is how you objectified me? That's all you cared about?
Yeah.
Oh.
Seema Auntie gets him chocolates, and then she tells him that, oh, have some chocolates. He gets up with his way too tight pants and says that he can't eat the chocolates. And Seema Auntie's making him fat by giving him chocolates because, you know, he can't be eating chocolates now that he's trying to hook up with this hot ass model. Just saying.
No, that was hilarious. And the interaction was so short with him and Seema Auntie. Like 90% of it was them exchanging pleasantries about, no, you're not fat, beta. And he's like, you're going to make me fat, Auntie. No, beta, you're fine. And then he like keeps saying thank you about the chocolates and the model that she got him. He had like the best day ever.
And then they show this whole like set of scenes of Aparna on dates with a few different guys, and she's connecting on friend levels with a lot of these guys, talking about like business and cooking and, you know, doing fun activities. She gets flowers.
They were calling her beautiful. There's 3 different dates within like a minute time frame on the episode. One date was like a cooking event. One date was just like drinks at a bar. And then one date was Zoom. And the Zoom guy is like, he was actually a pretty good looking dude. And he says he has a countertop business where he paints countertops with his friends. And then she doesn't like discount him or anything, but she like gives him business advice. And it goes to when you said that she had the Cindy upbringing, very business oriented. And she's like, you should
scalability of it all.
Scalability. How are you going to scale this? You should have a product that you can ship out because you can't scale painting countertops.
I was like, does she want to be on my board?
Yeah, it's so funny. She's like giving him advice. It was hilarious.
And it's so crazy because she says she hates being a lawyer. It's like, dude, you seem like smart enough. Why don't you do something else you like?
No, she's good. She's smart. You could tell from the dates.
Yeah. And she's just says that she's hopeful that all this effort will lead to love. So take us to the last scene, Imran.
We head off to the date with Vyasar. He goes on his date with Manisha, who is 7 years older than him. And it's a sort of a dessert type of date, or at least we see them in a dessert type of date. He admits to her first date in 9 months. He's honest, so I appreciate that. What are your thoughts on like, oh, it's your first date in 9 months as Desi culture and non-Desi culture?
I mean,
because they left it in as a red flag. They left that part of the conversation in for a purpose because the non-Desis would have a problem with the 9 months, right?
Well, you have to consistently be dating. Like, I don't know. I don't think it's a red flag.
I don't think it's a red
personally,
flag.
I haven't been on a date in 9 months. I've been chilling.
You haven't been, okay, whatever.
I mean, I have a different situation. I totally understand that. He broke up with someone too.
I mean, depending on how old you are and like what your mindset is, but sometimes you need to go through an eat, pray, love phase, and maybe that takes 9 months, you know? So I don't think you need to always be dating, but I mean,
I think
yeah,
that's
like,
the red flag. If somebody came up to me and said,
yeah,
I'm 37 years old, I've never been single, but I've been in 14 relationships. No, that's just as big a red flag as somebody who's 37, virginal, and never been in a relationship. To me, it's the same thing. Like, one person is completely hooked on other people's perceptions about them and they need that validation consistently. And the next person doesn't even know how to talk to people, and it's going to create its own set of issues. So
yeah, can't
that
connect.
middle ground is where it's at.
Totally.
And what does he like to do once a week? And she was like, what the hell?
Oh, was it Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, he's like,
Yes.
he's like, I play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, bro, hold this to the third or fourth date. Like, why are you bringing this up on the first date? I don't want to rip on this guy about D&D. Netflix knows what they're doing. Again, it's a common theme. 9 months,
But
no
also-
dates, and then Dungeons and Dragons. They were trying to show him as like a nerdy ass dude. But the scene ends. It's super cute. I liked it. It was like a little
They're
2-minute
sharing
date.
ice cream.
Vyasar, our homeboy, who I'm rooting for, towards the end, he's like, yeah, age is but a number. And she's like, all right, cool, let's do this. And in previous episodes, you mentioned meet cute. Like they're lucky to have this meet cute situation, or at least that's what I think they said. But they also discussed distance because she's from North Carolina versus Austin. And I love the way they ended it. Vyasar is just, I mean, the way they're portraying him, the last line, which is the title of this episode, he just ends it with, I want to see you again. I was like, oh, this guy, come on.
Yeah.
He's a teddy bear.
so-
Yeah, he was cool.
Yeah.
He feels the energy from Manisha all the way from North Carolina.
I like him. Again, I thought it was a contextually great episode on understanding the characters they built up. You know, we have the people we want to root for, the people we're kind of angry with, but as we learn more about their history, we empathize. And it's like the first episode is as if we went on these first dates with people. And I think with whether it's arranged marriage dates or if it's regular dates, like it takes 4 or 5 dates. Really, you kind of peel back the layers each meeting with that person.
Right.
I feel like this episode was like that. And it's like we're in this relationship with Indian matchmaking. That's my hot take. So by far my favorite episode of it all.
Agree.
Agreed. And all
Okay,
the comments I
all
made in
right.
this episode, don't come after me, people. Happy to clarify in the Instagram comments.
Yeah, go to Instagram and comment on the post. Shabnam's our social media manager. So
Yay.
he's posting up the social media. So share it and comment on there because the algorithm likes commenting and engagement. So go there, go to chaiafterdark.com, sign up to the newsletter, subscribe everywhere, anywhere, all that good stuff. You know it. You're probably tired of hearing about it. But you know what we're going to try to do, and I'm going to announce it here. We're going to do it for just this episode, is that go to greatpods.co on your desktop. There is a tab on the desktop that says add review. That's where you can add your personal review. Do that, and let's actually experiment to see if that actually helps the podcast out within Google SEO. So if you're listening, you like it, go to greatpods.co and add a review there on desktop.
Nice.
With Google SEO and my site, let's try it out.
Let's
give it a
try
try.
out. Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks.
Okay, let's do it. Let's jingle out of here.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Down,
to
down, 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 down.
Chai After Dark.
Later, y'all.
And Chai out.
This episode was produced, edited, marketed, and created by Shubnam, Captain Ron, and Sameem of Chai After Dark, LLC, in association with Great Pods.